I'm gonna make an attempt at a kind of best of nootropics video right now, while it's fresh on my mind. So I just shared in one of my bigger groups that, this morning playing around with something called bromantane, which it's classified as like a synthetic adaptogen. It's actually, it was an approved drug. I mean, it came from Russia during like the Soviet Union kind of period where they dumped a ton of money into human performance and really stuff that can kind of help modulate stress and performance for, soldiers, and they even had it for like cosmonauts. That's kind of the story behind it. But it was an approved drug for quite a long time for neurasthenia or something, which I think is just like general malaise, fatigue. But it absolutely has, it's technically a psychostimulant, but it actually modulates stress and anxiety through GABAergic expression, which GABA is just your, inhibitory neurotransmitter. You find alcohol, like benzos, they work heavily on GABA. So it's the neurotransmitter that helps you relax. But so it hits on dopamine and serotonin, and you get a noticeable mood boost. You definitely get kind of like a focus boost, but you don't get that big stress boost, which you'll see with all your other stimulants. Even caffeine at high doses will do that for people. Definitely like these stimulant based ADD medications, which they really don't work well for me. I don't like them at all. I don't like this kind of science, and it's like if someone has to take them and that's what works for them, whatever. Some people do well with them and they can cycle them and they don't go overboard. My concern with that is just always, you become reliant, and then it's like if your tolerance builds, or it's just you have to kind of really know what you're doing with this stuff. Anytime you're playing with neurochemistry, like you really need to know your stuff. You need to know yourself. You need to be carefully running experiments, which is really plays into nootropics, where first of all, nootropics, there is no hard science on nootropics. There's no way to tell person to person who's dopamine dominant, who's serotonin dominant. Like, these are just neurotransmitters that really dictate a lot of how someone feels on a day-to-day basis. So when we start to play around with these things, there's nobody that can tell you exactly how you're going to respond. I mean, if you can look into stuff that has more literature and research on it, I mean, obviously that's the nice thing about a lot of these ADD meds is at least there's a lot of literature to look into. But a lot of people, I mean, you look into the nootropics community, a lot of this is self-experimentation. Like I always kind of tell people, like, hey, find what works for you, low and slow. Don't go overboard. If you find something you really like don't go overboard and abuse it, that's my tendency. That's what a lot of us do. If we're kind of looking for an edge that we're missing at our normal baseline. But so that's kind of just a side rant on like really getting dialed in with nootropics. Is, like I say always, just find that stuff that works for you, evaluate it, and if you want to go to the next level, when you start to try out some of these nootropics, like look at what kind of the primary action is, see what system it's working on, and if a certain one works great for you, look into that mechanism of action. If it's hitting on dopamine or serotonin, kind of, oh god, I'm getting blinded. But kind of notate that and say, okay, you know what? This one really hits on dopamine, and it works really well for me. Okay, what other compounds are dopamine agonists that are researched, that have the literature, that have the safety? And that's kind of a way that you can play around with this stuff very carefully and find out what works for you. It's like with nootropics, like I would just never advise like, hey, just pick up some kind of nootropic stack online and just start blasting it, where it's like, okay, it's like anything. You start taking multiple things at once, you don't know what's doing what. Where it's like me, if you want to do this long term, if this is something you really enjoy doing, then you need to put the time and log the effort and document what you're doing so that you're doing it carefully. Whereas, I just see so many people that kind of go in and wing it and say, okay, this is that one compound, and then they use it every single day. And then all of a sudden, they're noticing their tolerance builds, and then, they try to stop it, and they're like, wow, I feel worse. Well, it's like, yeah, you're not, where this stuff is complex. I don't want to go down that wormhole. Like I say, I would never say I'm like elite level nootropics with like neuroscience and stuff, but I'm pretty good. I've put a lot of work in, and I've like I say, a lot of this is based on, you know, all my trial and error, all the mistakes I've made, all the stuff that didn't go well, is I just gradually kept learning what worked for me, how to for me, like I have to very carefully dose things, where it's like, especially with neurochemistry, you can easily throw things out of balance. Dopamine's great, but you drive dopamine too high, and all of a sudden, you know, the positives all of a sudden are significantly outweighed by the negatives. Where too much dopamine, you start to feel, you know, you get anxious, like it is not a good experience. So it's like you have to find that balance that works for you. So to give just a few of my favorites, what works really well for me is, you know, being ADD, struggling with you know, kind of anxiety, with focus. And it's not like on a daily basis, but those are my pitfalls, like chronic stress, anxiety, like that stuff can get to me and has got to me in the past. Obviously it's hard, you know, sometimes with ADD it's hard to get focused because your brain is just, you're constantly, it's like the channel's flipping too fast and you can't settle in. So for me, what I find is things that kind of boost dopamine just a little bit. I like a mild stimulant that kind of gets me going in the morning. And stuff that I found, well, the stuff that's really worked best for me is BPC. At one time was actually fantastic because BPC works on dopamine. It actually modulates dopamine, serotonin, and GABA. So it's really an interesting compound, and it does have like a really good nootropics boost for some people. Not everybody, and I always tell people this with BPC, is like you really need to carefully monitor how you feel. Some people it drives their anxiety high, some people they can't sleep, sometimes it's too much. Those are more rare side effects, but like you say, if you think you have dopamine issues, which is, you know, really prevalent with ADD, BPC, you know, lower doses could be something worth looking into. When I started BPC, it helped me a lot. Like I really got a great mood boost. I had focus, helped with brain fog, like a lot of stuff. Like I really liked BPC. And now it's at the point like I don't really use BPC that much. I'll use it once in a while. But it's like, and this stuff changes too. Like over the years, BPC used to be great for me. Now I'm kind of moved on. You know, I switched to like cerebrolysin. I'm sure everyone in this community knows that I'm crazy for cerebrolysin. And it's because a lot of time with nootropics is really identifying what are you trying to address. Or most of us that turn in nootropics, most of us are trying to address something like a baseline that's not good, whether it's anxiety, it's depression, you know, something that's holding us back. So being very clear with what you're trying to do is really important with nootropics, where it's like, okay, if you're someone who's, you know, you feel good day to day, everything is great, you're just looking for a little boost, something like bromantane could be fantastic. That just gets you above your baseline. You could look into racetams. I mean, honestly, cerebrolysin's fantastic. NAD plus, where it's like NAD plus, I wouldn't classify as I guess it's technically not a nootropic, but it'll definitely boost your focus. It'll definitely give you more mental clarity and energy. And to me, like, that's what people are looking for. Someone like me who is more, you know, hyperactive, trouble focusing, anxiety, some of the best things I found were, again, bromantane, because bromantane gives you an energy boost, a mood boost, and it actually modulates stress. Like I say, like you get good focus, but you're not like overstimulated and you know, feeling stressed out from that central nervous system stimulation. Also, again, I mean, I've obviously shared cerebrolysin, because cerebrolysin to me is foundational. And it's like, if you can find these foundational pieces that really reduce neural inflammation and actually heal things, again, BPC. And that's why I hammer people on peptides, is because peptides are bioidenticals. And a lot of times, well, I mean almost all the time with the peptides, is they're more healing, because our body produces these on its own for very specific health benefits. So when we're boosting those levels of that certain peptide, that certain signal in the body, we get a lot of benefits. You get that acute benefit from that certain signal, but then you get the downstream benefits of having things kind of put back into balance, or actually healing. And that's what cerebrolysin is fantastic, because cerebrolysin is neuropeptides. It's actual brain growth factors, including BDNF, which is, they call it like miracle growth for the brain. So you are really significantly lowering neural inflammation, and everything comes back to inflammation. Chronic inflammation leads to the degradation of a lot of systems. It leads to chronic diseases, and this is just stuff that doctors, practitioners, experts have been saying this stuff has just been hammered for the last decade. Chronic inflammation. So just simple big picture stuff is, hey, what are powerful compounds that reduce neural inflammation and heal things? And it's peptides, cortexin, which is similar to cerebral lysin, another biologic that's brain growth factors, NAD+. I mean, essentially it's all the stuff that I hammer consistently on. But yeah, those are like kind of big picture targets for if you're trying to boost cognition, and even mitochondria, where it's like, if you don't have energy, then I don't care what nootropic you're using, where it's just like, it's not going to make a big difference. And that's why I see sometimes some people have what I would consider like a broken system. Your energy's bad, your hormones aren't optimized, everything is up, and then you're dumping on something like Adderall or caffeine or these heavy stimulants, trying to get yourself back to just where your baseline could be, not even above baseline. And it's like, first of all, your system can't even support it. You don't have the cellular energy with NAD. Your hormones are shot, where it's like you're in chronic fatigue and you're trying to dump a booster on a broken system, and it does not work. So it's like, build your foundation first. Like, nootropics are kind of a final piece, except for, like I say, except for cerebral lysin, actually, except for everything I just mentioned, because it can start to heal that baseline. Or it's like kind of like the finishers, like nootropics. Like, I wouldn't play around with like modafinil, like Adderall. Those things are just, they're driving the system so hard that you can just crash on that. Now, people, you do whatever you gotta do to get by, but this is just stuff to keep in mind, where, that's obviously why I love NAD, is because it'll actually start to reset energy metabolism. You can work on the mitochondria. You can help restore, where NAD isn't just a temporary energy fix. It can be a longer term kind of reset for the body and the brain. But again, whatever the core issue has to be addressed. Whatever is driving those issues, where it's really like NAD is it's rarely gonna cure what is going on. NAD can be a fantastic bridge. It can be part of a holistic treatment to get you to that next step, but you have to know what is driving it. You have to be looking at, okay, what is causing this energy deficient? Is it chronic stress? Is it, chronic infections? All sorts of different things. Is it my hormones aren't in balance? So again, get the foundation right, layer it in, careful experimentation, careful documenting, and then it's like say, I'm at a point where, in general, like, I feel pretty good, and I know I have this big tool bag of different things that I can use on occasion when I want that specific boost. And like I say, so bromantane is one of those things. You can look into racetams. I'm going to put together a more comprehensive post on like the actual compounds, but this is more like a higher level, big picture view with nootropics, to get to that point. Whereas there's a lot of different tools, and ultimately the really big picture with what at least I'm doing in the brand I'm building in the community is, I don't want to be reliant on any of these things. I want to get to the point like my baseline is great, and I'm not addicted to anything. I feel good day to day, and then I'll play around with these compounds with NAD and stuff for anti-aging purposes, for acute situations, like where it's okay if I'm going through a stressful period, or I'm doing a lot of work, or I'm trying to write a book or something, and I need that boost. I want that little extra edge. Like, that's where I see these things big picture fitting in for me. But end of day, I don't want to be like, I'm not trying to take this stuff every single day. I want to feel good every day, and that's what I'm working extremely hard towards. And it's a long process, and realistically, there's going to be a number of things that I'm going to rely on. Like, I'm already on testosterone replacement. And it really comes down to, you do the best you can. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not ever going to get to the point, like, I don't think with me, I'm never going to get to the point like I'm going to cure my ADD and it's going to be gone. Where it's like, I want to get to the point like I feel as good as possible, get to my baseline as high as possible. Hopefully this makes sense, and it's 14 minutes, so I'm going to stop ranting. People, have a good day. Keep on keeping on.